Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inner World podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Pedro Cortina. In this podcast, we aim to explore the most powerful, efficient, joyful, and sustainable models of inner transformation out there. Thank you for joining us today. When it comes to sense of purpose or transcendence, in my experience, one just follows the other. As soon as we settle internally and have our inner system sustained by trust, by a sense of inner holding, then purpose just flows naturally. No need to do anything about that. Purpose is an interesting thing because we think we have to find it, or that we have to produce it somehow, or that we have to figure it out, or that we have to construct it somehow. But from my experience and the experience of many of my clients, a purpose shows up naturally when we take care of whatever is getting in the way of purpose. So purpose manifests effortlessly when we have taken care of what gets in the way of our flowing, fearless, self-aligned, connected, clear space. Some people think that you need to kind of commit to some kind of purpose, or that you need to establish the principles of your life, or a mechanism by which you know who you are and what are you here for. And if we look at this process more closely, we'll just notice that the only thing we're doing is we're adding additional interpretative layers to who we really are. So we're layering up shoulds, shouldn'ts, projections, assumptions, expectations to who we already are. And some of you may recognize this quite quickly, because that is the way we are educated, that is the way we are brought up, that is the way we are taught that we should engage with the world, that we should build this persona, this individual that does not have those negative quirks, or that should have those positive ones, or that should be liked by people. And nothing wrong with being liked by people, but when our sense of life or death is linked to the approval of others, we know how complicated that can get. So yeah, purpose is an interesting thing. Purpose just comes up naturally when we are free of fear, when we are free of when we're free of anxiety, when we are free of misalignment, when we are not displaced internally. And what does this mean, this being displaced internally? Well, it's very easy to see because it feels very weird inside. It feels as if literally something was either out of balance, more I would say out of alignment or out of structure. It feels as if you need to carry some dead weight without any structural support just because you're not aligned with a column that could be actually supporting whatever weight you're carrying, and the column's just there. It's a very interesting condition. Being misaligned is a little bit like having parts of us in polarization internally, parts of us doubting one another, parts of us pulling in different directions, parts of us scared about something and others not. And then generally what happens is that even when they would seem to be the most sophisticated parts of us that are trying to bring some lifting to whatever that weight is, because it is not the relaxed holding of understanding and true self, even as sophisticated as they may seem, these parts end up carrying that which is being displaced. So it's quite common to see, and of course it happens all the time, that we are in our process of inner exploration and we're noticing what kind of support we need inside in terms of understanding or alignment or relaxation or letting go. But there is a sophisticated, apparently well-intended, or let's say fully well-intended part that is actually having to carry some weight. So as soon as we notice that there's any form of weight being carried, by any internal form or expression or part, that would be a sign of misalignment, even with its best intentions, even with some results at some point, even with having, probably even deeper understanding of some things. If there is any sense that anything internally needs to be carried, it just means that we're not fully self-aligned, that we're not fully resting in the columns of self that are there. They're already there for us all the time. So this brings up an interesting question. How do we do this? How do we first find those columns of self, those foundations, if we want to call them? We need to find them first. And then we need to just relax into them. You see? There's no doing, there's no efforting, there's no carrying, there's no tension, there's no friction. Just find those foundations of self and relax into them. And this is a lot of what we see also in some of the Eastern traditions of Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, in the Mahamudra and the Dzogchen schools. This relaxation into Rigpa, into the essence of who we are, into the expression of who we really are. The biggest challenge here is to clarify those foundations of self as a lived experience inside. Let me say that again. The most difficult part of this is to be able to clarify these foundations of self, where we would just need to relax into. And there's a lot of suggestions and interpretations about how to access these. From what I've noticed and from what I've seen from the experiences of many clients, the essence of these pillars, or the foundation of self, is acceptance, surrender, and that's a word that for some people, brings up all kinds of things. Let me just continue to offer. It has to do with saying surrender. It was saying relaxation into. It was saying recognition of this that holds everything, or this that sustains everything, but not in an intellectual way, not in a, this is how it's supposed to work. Rather, in an actual internal lived experience. Let me give you an example about this. So if I'm going about my day and suddenly I feel some anxiety, tinge of anxiety or something like that, when I do not have enough self-energy, what happens generally is I would notice and I would start questioning, oh, what's that? Or who are you, if I'm relating to it as a part? Or how can I help? And it's, very, very, apparently caring and apparently curious and apparently, available. But the only thing I'm doing really is just pushing this, trying to push this anxiety or whatever is manifesting on its own. I'm trying to push it into somewhere. So in essence, I'm doing some fixing. On the other hand, and this is much more of a lived experience than a rational experience, the questioning of the emotion or the part or the whatever you want to call it comes in, and a part that's probably a mind heavy one starts, okay, what do we need to do? And yes, and the interesting thing is we can present it as if we were, just holding compassion, clarity, understanding. It could present itself that way. Nevertheless, that is not the experience that's going to actually support us in finding and recognizing these pillars or these foundations of self. The true and tried way for me and for some of my clients to do that is just to move beyond language when we are interacting in our inner world. That helps a lot. Language tends to be mission-driven, agenda-driven. It tends to be transactional. It tends to be it tends to separate things. Whenever you say something, you're not saying everything else. You see, every affirmation in language is a negation of everything else. So by going in and opening up to whatever the experience is internally, and then simply relaxing into the sensation, relaxing into what naturally would appear to be needed in that moment. And I know naturally is a tricky word, but what would, and yeah, effortlessly is also a difficult word. It's more like where things would need to naturally be held. That's what's coming. Where things would naturally be held in a way that is aligned, and in a way that is self-reliable, and in a way that it is clear. And so that's one of the practices that I recommend some of my clients, is just to, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, notice any activation in your system, and really move into the sensation of it, the bodily sensation of it, the emotional sensation of it, the directly living the sensation or the emotion, directly just relaxing into that, relaxing into that, relaxing into that. And as we do that, what would generally happen is that because we're not trying to fix the condition internally, we're not trying to, quote unquote, creatively come up with solutions, or we're not trying to, build a counter effect to the negative effect, because we're not constructing something, we're not building something, we're not adding something. All that energy becomes available. Because we're not doing all that energy becomes available. And as we allow ourselves to receive this tension that we were experiencing inside, then the whole attempt to fix or to construct a solution is not necessary. And all that energy, which is a huge chunk of energy, is now available to us. And if we just allow for that relaxation to happen, then this effortlessly natural, permeating understanding begins to naturally manifest inside. And as we do that, we start getting clear insight. And it's probably not, again, not an intellectual thing. It's not a, oh, you should do this or that. Oh, now step 1, step 2, step 3. No, it should be more like, or like, or like, oh. It's just completely self-evident, very, very subtle, completely effortless, no pushing, no cajoling, no. And just resting in that space, resting in that space. And if we can allow ourselves to sustain this practice, in whatever way it works. Some people need more time for whatever reason than others in terms of reaching this space of self-alignment. Some And sometimes depending on the level of activation, right? Sometimes depending on the level of activation, you may need more time, sometimes less time. Or for some people, how often they practice has an overall effect to how deep they need to go. So it may be something like, some people probably may need 3-hour parts work meditation or sit down or practice, whatever you want to call it, exploration every week. And probably other people need 15 minutes a day or something like that. So I think it depends on each of our systems. But the important thing I think is here is that probably all this doing that happens when we're interacting with our inner world, all this, step one, step two, all these conversations that we're having internally, probably reify or solidify our inner environment a little bit much in the long run. So instead of, setting up a bunch of internal rules and a bunch of internal, this is how this is done, and that's how that's done, and this is what you ask this part, and that's what you do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We just go inside, identify the activation, really deeply receive and surrender your awareness and your sensations, your capacity to sense, to holding and surrendering even whatever activation is manifesting. And just by doing that, for a little while, we would have important amounts of energy available to us, because we're not constructing something, trying to fix something, try to come up with an abstract and external solution. We're just allowing for the full recognition of whatever experience we're having in that activation, fully allowing. And if we endure, if we have the courage, and if we develop the capacity to stay in that space of allowing, and therefore not using excess energy, trying to fix something, this relaxing into actually allows for our own intellect to get out of the way, to allow for that energy that would be consumed otherwise to be there, to be available, to be accessible. And this is where the magic happens. Because once this energy is available and accessible, there's no need to do anything with it. The system, self, whatever you want to call it, when this energy seems to be available, system or self naturally uses it at a higher level, at a more intuitive, I don't know if that's the right word, at a level that is more flowing. and where it has the best use, and where it is the most efficient, and where it is the clearest, and where it is where it builds the most inner capacity. So, yeah, a little bit of an exploration there. And thank you for listening. This is the Inner World Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Pedro Cortina. And all the best in your quest. We're going to have the Sorcerer's Way book, Fantasy Leadership Manual, coming out soon for whomever is interested. Keep in touch, and all the best.